I know Freddie wouldn't want to do it.
In a quiet hospital room in London, a dying man allegedly whispered a secret that would later shake everyone who once stood close to Freddie Mercury. The nurse beside him would later claim that in his final hours, consumed by guilt and fever, the man repeated the same sentence over and over again. "I did this because I loved him." Not hate, not greed. Love. According to this nurse, the man claimed that decades earlier, at the height of Queen's global domination, he had set something in motion that could never be undone. He claimed that one single decision, a single introduction, would eventually destroy the voice that conquered stadiums and healed millions. No police report was ever filed. No official investigation followed. For years, the story remained only a whisper inside private diaries and frightened conversations, until former insiders began talking, until long-buried rumors resurfaced, until fans began noticing the pieces that never seemed to fit. And suddenly, one question refused to go away. Was this only the fantasy of a dying man, or the confession of the darkest betrayal in rock history? But to understand that final whisper, we must rewind to the moment when this man first entered Freddie's life. Quietly, politely, almost invisibly. Before we continue, if you love the stories of Freddie Mercury and Queen and want to help keep his legacy alive, subscribe to this channel. In the late 1970s, a young, fast-talking, intensely charismatic assistant from Belfast stepped into the orbit of Queen's inner circle. His name was Paul Prenter. At first, he was just another helper, another face moving equipment, answering phones, organizing schedules, but something about him made him rise unnaturally fast. He understood people. More importantly, he understood weaknesses. And Freddie's greatest weakness was never confidence, it was loneliness. Paul learned quickly how to become indispensable. He listened when others rushed. He stayed when others left. He praised when others questioned. And slowly, privately, the line between professional loyalty and emotional dependency began to blur. Inside the band, unease grew. Brian May would later describe Paul's influence as disturbing. Roger Taylor would be even more blunt, calling him manipulative and dangerous. But none of that mattered, because Freddie trusted him. And once trust becomes emotional oxygen, removing it becomes nearly impossible. What started as management soon transformed into access. What began as service quietly evolved into control. And inside that control, something far darker was forming. Because adoration, when poisoned by insecurity, does not remain admiration. It mutates into possession. By the early 1980s, Paul was no longer just an assistant. He had positioned himself as the gatekeeper of Freddie's life. Friends went through him. Messages passed through him. Access flowed through his approval. And anyone who grew too close to Freddie felt the atmosphere change. When Jim Hutton entered Freddie's life, the temperature shifted immediately. Those close to the situation would later describe the tension as suffocating. Passive-aggressive remarks, sudden schedule changes, silent hostility that required no explanation. Paul framed it all as protection. You're being used. They only want your fame. They'll abandon you when things get hard. At first, it sounded like care. Over time, it sounded like isolation. The more Freddie found real affection elsewhere, the more Paul's behavior hardened. Jealousy metastasized into obsession, and obsession does something terrifying to the human brain. It convinces the person that destruction is justified as devotion. By 1983, the underground nightlife of New York and Munich was flooded with whispers. Not proof, just patterns. Stories of men who vanished, of dangerous encounters, of secrets hidden behind neon lights and cash envelopes. And according to later allegations, that is when Paul allegedly learned something that changed everything. Something he was never supposed to know. And once he knew it, a plan reportedly began to take shape. Before any rumor of illness ever reached the press, the first confirmed betrayal struck in the most public way possible. Paul sold Freddie out. In 1987, one of Britain's biggest tabloids erupted with private details that only someone inside Freddie's home could have known. Parties, intimacies, personal struggles, encounters that never should have left the walls of Garden Lodge. Freddie was devastated. Those close to him described days of complete emotional collapse. Not because the public knew, but because the one person he trusted to protect him had sold his life to strangers. This was not rumor. This was confirmed betrayal. From that moment forward, whatever affection once existed between Freddie and Paul shattered into permanent rupture. Paul was removed from Queen's inner circle. The phone stopped ringing. The access vanished overnight. But something strange happened next. The rumors did not fade. They multiplied. And they grew darker. Because within underground circles, a far more disturbing accusation began to circulate. One too extreme to print, too sinister to prove, and too horrifying for many fans to even hear. It wasn't about exposure, it wasn't about money, it was about intention. Years after the tabloid scandal, claims began surfacing that went far beyond betrayal. They suggested something unimaginable, that Paul may have intentionally introduced Freddie to dangerous encounters at a time when a deadly illness was spreading in silence. Let this be absolutely clear. There is no verified medical proof that any single person intentionally infected Freddie. There is no court ruling confirming these accusations. What exists are claims, confessions, secondary testimonies, and unverified recordings that appeared decades later. But once these stories surfaced, they spread like wildfire. According to these allegations, Paul had formed contacts inside underground nightlife circles. According to certain former insiders, he allegedly learned which men were already carrying the illness and used that knowledge for manipulation. Again, these are claims, not legal fact. But what made them explosive was not just what they accused, it was who repeated them. Former security staff, former club employees, former acquaintances who had nothing to gain and everything to lose by speaking. And then, years later, something surfaced that reignited everything. Recordings, diaries, fragments of a narrative that many believe was never meant to be uncovered. And once those fragments appeared, fans began re-examining history with new eyes. In the late 2010, online forums and fan archives exploded with claims of uncovered tapes and handwritten journals allegedly linked to former Queen associates. Some fans say they heard muffled audio conversations. Others claim decoded voices confirmed secret arrangements. None of this has been independently verified through official forensic channels. And yet, the belief spread faster than proof. Why? Because the human brain is wired to connect emotional dots long before logical ones. People noticed unusual scheduling shifts, sudden disappearances of certain names from personal records, medical anomalies that were explained away at the time as exhaustion. Fans began to ask dangerous questions. Had Freddie been warned earlier? Had treatment been delayed? Had someone encouraged denial? Again, no court confirmation exists. But the quiet suspicion lingered, not because of evidence alone, but because Freddie's physical decline began suspiciously early, and that decline unfolded in plain sight. By mid-1985, the cracks were no longer invisible. Freddie's energy fluctuated. Night sweats became common. His strength faded between recordings. Friends noticed fevers, exhaustion, moments of dizziness. Still, he pushed forward. The world watched as he took the stage at Live Aid and delivered one of the most legendary performances in history. Defiant, brilliant, heroic. But behind the triumph was a body already under attack. In private, concerns spiraled. Doctors were consulted, then questioned, then quietly dismissed. Some symptoms were labeled as fatigue, others as stress. Still others were ignored by choice rather than mistake. Those close to him described a man who sensed something was wrong, but refused to fully look at it, because fear, when mixed with denial, becomes paralyzing. And somewhere in the shadows of that denial, guilt is rumored to have quietly grown in someone else entirely. Because while Freddie fought to sing, another man was reportedly fighting himself. Years later, a letter allegedly emerged, a final written confession. According to those who claim to have seen it, the letter described obsession, regret, and decisions that could never be undone. It admitted to manipulation, to betrayal beyond repair, to a kind of love that no longer recognized morality. The letter has never been officially authenticated, but its existence changed the conversation, not because of legal weight, but because of emotional impact. When the allegations were finally whispered to Freddie during his final months, those close to him say he did not explode. He did not seek revenge. He did something far more terrifying. He forgave. Mary Austin would later describe Freddie as too tired to carry hatred anymore. Anger requires strength, and by then, strength was dwindling. He is said to have remarked that some people don't understand the difference between loving someone and owning them. That one sentence reshaped everything, because it suggested that even if the darkest rumors were lies, The emotional truth was real, and that truth alone was already devastating enough. The final chapters of Freddie Mercury's life unfolded in quiet suffering and unmatched dignity. His voice weakened, his body surrendered, but his spirit never did. He continued to record, to create, to laugh when possible. When he left this world at just 45 years old, he left behind something immortal: music, hope, a legacy that refuses to die. The other man's ending, however, came in near total silence. No crowds, no applause, no worldwide mourning. Only whispered regret and a name most fans would rather forget entirely. According to those who were present in his final hours, the man asked only one question: did he forgive me? Whether that forgiveness was real or imagined may never be confirmed, but the contrast between their endings could not be more brutal. One died as a legend, the other as a shadow. And still, one last mystery continues to haunt this story. To this day, the identity of the men named in underground allegations remains unproven. Some names appear nowhere in official records. Some deaths match initials but not identities. Some dates align too closely to ignore. But without court evidence, without forensic verification, without sworn testimony under law, the final truth remains trapped between documentation and rumor. And perhaps it always will. What cannot be denied is this: one man built a legacy of sound that still shakes the world. Another became synonymous with obsession, betrayal, and unanswered questions. This story is not about illness alone. It is about the darkest distortion of human emotion, the moment when love mutates into control and devotion collapses into destruction. Freddie once said that the show must go on, and it did. But behind the curtain, some stories never truly end. They only echo. If this story shook you even a little, if it made you question how deeply betrayal can cut, then don't let this story disappear into silence. Subscribe now so these hidden chapters of music history never stay buried. Like this video so the truth, or at least the questions, reach more people. And share your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe obsession can truly destroy a legend? Or was this only a tragic collision of rumor, fear, and fate?